So when I actually accepted to speak here, probably about 6 months ago, I was running social media at Walgreens. So a lot of what we want to talk about here is going to be, since it's obviously retail focused, I'm actually going to rely a lot on the Walgreens experience. I wish we were kind of actually presenting about a month later, because all the great work coming out of Campbell in Q1, which we started in August, actually will hit the market in about 2 weeks. That said, we're going to talk a little bit about the return on amazing. I've heard ROI, 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 ROI all morning, right? We had a whole entire panel talking about how will you measure this, how will this help sell a house, and I think social media at scale is insanely hard, like ridiculously hard. And it kills me when you see consultants who have not worked in the industry write like a 10 best steps in order to make social media work at your organization. If you see them, don't read them. They don't work. There is no formula for it. If there was a formula, none of you would be here today. You would all be back implementing the 10-step program. There is no 10 steps. No, like really, it's insanely difficult. Having seen it at Walgreens with 250,000 employees, where you have unionized employees, you have non-unionized employees, you have hourly employees, you have corporate employees, you have employees across the entire country, you have those that are international, you have acquisition, you have distribution centers. It is not easy at all. So I feel for all of you who are in social in some way, shape, or form or capacity. And when I joined the team at Campbell Soup, one of the things I absolutely loved about their vision for thinking about digital, they said, we don't want a head of social, we don't want a head of digital media, we don't want a head of digital marketing. They said, we want one person to look over all of those areas. And if you think about your own internal dynamics at an organization of trying to actually make social work, how many peers you have to try and convince, how many hand-holding sessions you have to have, how many therapeutic offsites you have to kind of go through to make something happen, having one person actually being able to oversee everything makes my life a little bit easier than I think some of you, unfortunately. I always describe it as it's like building a plane while trying to fly the plane. And oh, by the way, you have to be the pilot, you have to be the flight attendant, you have to be the surly customer, you have to be the ground crew, you have to be everyone. And I really have a hard time with social when I see the way that I think a lot of it ultimately ends up getting done. I think we've reduced it to direct mail, like really bad direct mail, like robocall political style direct mail. And how many of you have been asked the question of, what is this thing doing for my business, right? The ROI for the business, right? And it looks like this. It says, okay, we've got these 2 million fans on Facebook, and about 15% of them actually saw my post, right? And about another 10% of them actually clicked on it, and then another 10% actually ended up converting at some dollar amount. Let's call it $10 a transaction, which leads to $30,000. You have literally just reduced yourself to direct mail. You've reduced yourself to email. You've reduced yourself to paid search. You've reduced yourself to banner advertising. That completely misses the point of social marketing at scale. But this is really easy to demonstrate. You can say, look, this campaign worked. The campaign worked. The campaign had the ROI. Social didn't have the ROI. And one of the fun things we used to kind of debate at Walgreens was the attribution modeling. So if someone comes to the Facebook page, then searches for something on Google, do I get credit for the sale? Well, no, because if you're using last click, then of course the paid search got it. So how do you really want to kind of start to measure this? You can start to see why it becomes a very jumbled, complicated mess. And in that goal of trying to get to the ROI, it's almost like we're so far up against this tree, you don't even see the forest of the opportunity. You just do not see it, fundamentally. And frankly, it then starts to lead to a shortage of what I call amazing ideas. And that's actually where Return on Amazing as a concept started about 2.5 years ago. I believe people have always been very social. Like extremely social. You hear something that's amazing, you tell someone about it. You have something that's a very negative experience, you tell someone about it. The concept of being social as a human being is innate. It's there. It's been there. I think people want to be amazed. I think you want to walk into a hotel and find out, you know what, we're going to upgrade you to the penthouse suite just because it's available. That's amazing. You want to be the person who, when you check in and you request getting the upgrade on the flight, you actually get it. Now, it's a small victory. It is. But that's actually sometimes, at the end of the day of a really long day, a really amazing experience. The problem is, when you think about the ad agency model and you think about the marketing model, we only try to do this once a year. We do it for the Super Bowl. We put all of our eggs into one giant basket, and we say, on the world's largest stage, not including the Olympics, when the Olympics isn't running, we're going to do the most amazing experiences that we ever can think of. I got a tough time with that. Because you're taking one gigantic gamble. Unless, of course, you do what Google did when they did Parisian Love, which is they ran a bunch of ads online, They looked at which ones actually resonated the most, and then they picked that ad to run during the Super Bowl. See, that's smart marketing. That's taking insights over opinions. That's taking ideas and making them flourish. And that's our problem begins. I don't know how many of you followed any of the tweets or the coverage coming from Cannes. I love following this stuff. I love when agencies send hundreds upon hundreds of people to Cannes and then ask why it is that I'm cutting their fee. And then they say, well, no, we need more money. And they said, right, but you just sent 200 people to Cannes at like $20,000 a trip. Like, something doesn't add up here. And this is what marketers look at as being amazing. We say, we had 15,000 mentions of the Conline hashtag in the first 24 hours, more than the entire week last year. To me, I say, aren't we sending the wrong people? Now, more importantly, when I say about people wanting to have amazing experiences, did anybody watch this? The guy trying to cross on the wire, like across the entire Niagara Falls? I was riveted to it, right? 353,000 uses in the first hour, because that's amazing, and us talking about marketing isn't amazing. It's just not. When I think of return on amazing, I think of the first thing I ever worked on that I kind of held at an amazing level. It was in 2000, 2001, I was working at Fallon in Minneapolis before Publicis bought them. And Fallon was still a place of amazing ideas. And we did BMW films, which then became the model after it generated 11 million video views. By the way, in a time where broadband penetration was like 30%, maybe 25%, and led to a 12% sales increase when we actually measured the effectiveness of it. So we knew it worked. And that became a model for things like Dove Real Beauty. And of course, then the Wieden and Kennedy work that took Old Spice. But when I think about amazing ideas, when I think about really amazing ideas, I think about what Nike did. Started as a shoe company, got into apparel, natural line extension, and then they come up with this idea of Nike Plus. Now think how brilliant this is. Right? Adidas is really the ones known for running. And I know we're technically in Boston, so we got to give some shout-outs to the New Balance team, too. I saw some folks working around here from New Balance. But in the time when Nike launched Nike Plus, they completely locked out every other competitor by being able to work with Apple exclusively. I mean, what was Adidas going to do? Go work with Microsoft on the Zune? They're gonna I mean, it just doesn't work, right? That's what amazing does, though. Amazing gets you amazing partners who want to help be part of amazing experiences. And it happened to work. 40% of people who ended up joining, they didn't own Nike Plus initially. They weren't a Nike customer. I mean, think about that. That's loyalty. That's transition. That's game changing. And then they brought things like the Fuel Band, which I'm addicted to. Like, I don't know if anyone else has a Fuel Band. Like, I walk now like way more often than I probably ever did before. I have no idea what fuel means, by the way. I have no idea what fuel means. But I know that if I don't hit my fuel goal, I'm really irritated by it. The thing is, it doesn't have to be big. And I think sometimes when we think about social, when we think about these really big things, you kind of get tripped up into, how do I make this happen? It's so big, product development, all these different things. It doesn't have to be big. I love this. I absolutely love it. Not for the message. The message is great. But here's what I love. That when you do something like this, you get someone who says, I think it'd be the most amazing thing if you actually made Oreo cookies that were rainbow colored. Now, how awesome would that have been if Kraft actually came out with like a limited run, 100,000 packages, and just let people bid on them? And it's not like it can't get done, because when you think about what Kellogg's did recently, the lead singer Tim Burgess of the British rock band The Charlatans recently tweeted that he wanted to have his own cereal. And they started going back and forth. And so Kellogg's, like in the stream of conscience, said, you know what? We're going to give you your own cereal. We're going to make it just for you. It's going to be called Totes Amazeballs. I'm serious, Totes Amazeballs. So it's not like Kraft couldn't have done this with Oreo. That would have been the next step towards truly being amazing. That said, the stuff that they've been doing in terms of content, the Mars rover landing, I mean, what they're really rethinking about the brand and what it means to connect the consumers, makes me so jealous, to be honest with you. You know, when you kind of look at it, that's amazing work. Like when you see something that your competitor is doing or your comparative set is doing and you wish you were doing it, you know it's hitting the right chord. So the question always comes back to the ROI piece, right? And my old boss and good colleague of mine, Kevin Doohan, used to run digital at Red Bull. A couple years ago came up with this initiative. You buy a 10-pack of Red Bull. You set it up. You get your own racetrack. Using the proprietary Red Bull app, you actually create your own racetrack, and you can challenge people across the entire globe on your track or default tracks. So I asked Kev, I said, why did you guys do this? Like, I can't imagine you got more than 10,000 downloads or 20,000 downloads, maybe 100,000 at most. I don't get it. I said, well, think about it this way. You have grocery retailers who are trying to maximize shelf space. And a 10-pack is awesome for us. Like, you're buying 10 Red Bull, not 4, not 1. Because a 10-pack takes a lot of room up on a shelf. So when you go into negotiations as a CPG and you're talking to the category manager and you want to get more shelf space on that shelf set, you have to basically make them feel like you're going to do things that will drive people into the aisle. He said, this initiative, while cool, while neat, while interesting, while amazing, while awesome, and totally tapped into the passion of their fans, because people who are into Red Bull like geeked out on this. He's like, it was an awesome sales tool when our sellers went to the category managers of a Kroger or a Walmart or a Target and said, don't get rid of the 10 packs in favor of more 4 packs. Don't get rid of the 10 packs in favor of letting Pepsi have AMP on the shelf. Good luck finding AMP on the shelf right now. It doesn't exist anymore other than in convenience stores, basically. And this initiative was one of the big initiatives that actually knocked AMP off the shelf. So sometimes you do amazing experiences as part of a defense strategy. Sometimes you do it as part of being an offensive strategy. The point being, everybody wants to be associated with amazing things. One of my favorite things of a story, though, is what Apple did a couple years ago when the iPad first rolled out. So they were doing all this field testing in the stores when people would return an iPad. I mean, who the hell would return an iPad? That was the concept. It's the most amazing thing in the world. It's transformational. It's magical, right? Everything that Steve Jobs said it was. So who in their right mind would return it? So when they were returning them, the people who were taking the returns would put Post-it note messages of why they were returned. And so when one guy actually walked in and returned it, he said, my wife said no. Eventually, this actually made it all the way back to the VP of Sales and Customer Affairs at Apple, who tracked down the person, because they had their, their Apple ID account on file, sent him the iPad back with a post-it from Apple that said, well, Apple says yes. Now, here's the thing. You can't scale that to 10 million people, okay? But like, when you hear that story, you're like, that's a brand you want to be associated with. That's a brand that says, I want you to have the most amazing thing. And it's, it's little stories like that. Social Bakers research company, social analytics company, did an analysis recently that said something like 70% of consumer complaints go unanswered online. They said, oh, the benchmark should be 60. You should be able to answer 65% of every customer's complaint online. And it took really big issue with the alcohol category, which had like 4% response. Now, again, like I said, social is like really hard, like insanely hard, and you shouldn't listen to consultants who haven't been in the space. Anybody work in alcohol before? Anybody work in an adult brand before? Cigarettes, alcohol, tobacco, gambling, anything? Okay, good. Here's the thing. You talk to someone under the age of 21, even if it's not marketing, you will be sued. You will be brought in. You are not allowed to connect with people under the age of 21. It is illegal. Now, have you ever tried to verify someone's actual age? I mean, like, it's really hard, right? Especially in digital. You can fake anything. So without things like the new verification that rolled out for Twitter, you open yourself up. You open your company up to potential serious problems. And you know what? I have no problem with Miller Lite ignoring 96% of people that are out there because it protects every single one of their employees who have a job today. And that's the difference between folks on the outside who tell you about how to do social right and those who have been inside of social who know how to do it right. This is my favorite, though. Hopefully some of you have seen this. For those of you who haven't, I think this is fantastic. It kind of makes you want to touch a Coke machine right now, doesn't it? Cost to make that, the actual machine, less than $65,000. Production value, less than 10K. Consolidated global impressions on YouTube, 25 million plus. You can do amazing. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be expensive. But think about what it took to pull that off, right? From building this, to filming it, to getting the rights to shoot it on campus. It takes a lot of steps. So why do I believe in Return Amazing, right? So I've kind of poked some holes, kind of poked a tiger or two, I think, maybe, in like kind of this up front. So a couple things. I think you attract an unfair share of exceptional talent. So right now we're hiring like crazy, to build this digital team at Campbell. And I was talking to a candidate who lives in another city the other day, and she said, why would I want to relocate to Philly and come work at Campbell Soup? And he told me about the company. I said, you shouldn't come. You shouldn't come to work at Campbell Soup. I said, I wouldn't come just for the company. I said, you should come because you're going to work on a team that's going to let you do amazing things like this. I said, and she's like, really? I said, right, so let me ask you a question. When's the last time you actually walked in the office inspired by what you're going to do today in social? She's like, okay, good point. Right, I'm creating content calendars and editorial calendars and pulling Facebook analytics stuff, and I'm gauging sentiment. I'm like, yeah, exactly. When's the last time you actually had a chance to do something that's really cool, really amazing, completely different, and with that kind of latitude? She's like, well, it actually hasn't happened in 3 years. I was like, you'll get that working with me. And she's like, okay, I'm interested now. I was like, well, of course you are, right? Because you all want to work with exceptional talent. Like, I want to work with exceptional talent. That's how you get to break through ideas. I want the agencies to be knocking down my door. I want Food Spotting begging me to work with Food Spotting, not me having to call Food Spotting. And if you think about the different partners you might work with in your space, you should want the exact same. You want them begging for you, not the opposite way around. And these partners, they do Clamor with you. I know in the earlier panel, they were talking about kind of the one-off integration between Foursquare and Google+. I'll tell you, if you're in the food category, they'll always tell you about how you can either be the first to market, you can be the fast follower. And that the fast follower sometimes gives you a strategic advantage, right? Someone else builds the category, takes on all the weight to kind of make it happen. In digital, in social, you don't want to be the fast follower. I mean, think about it this way. To get into social 5 years ago when Facebook likes were still on a 20 cent, let's call it, maybe acquisition cost per like, you know what they are today? Upwards of $2. So those brands who got into it early had a huge financial advantage to all of you who got into it 3 and 4 years later. Fast follower doesn't work in social and certainly doesn't work in digital. And it definitely doesn't excite someone like Foursquare to want to do things that are completely unique. It doesn't excite someone like Twitter who says, yes, we absolutely want to do this because it's never been done before. Part of building the brands of these partners is doing things that have never been done before so that they have these case studies. There's an intrinsic value there when you do things that are amazing. You gain flexibility. Here's the beautiful thing about being amazing. When you think about amazing in terms of a concept, it's wide. It's not narrow. When it's not narrow, you can pivot left, right, up, down, in, out. I mean, it's amazing what you can do with it, right? When you're not locked into just Facebook or just Twitter or just Foursquare or just social CRM, no. When you think about amazing being horizontal, you can pivot all day long while your competitors try to take you apart, vertical by vertical by vertical. And they do work across an organization. One of our big litmus test criteria at Walgreens was, does it actually get more than 5 teams involved? And when you get more than 5 teams involved, it's your own company, right? If you've got legal, consumer affairs, store operations, marketing, promotional team, all of a sudden you get a bunch of people excited, right? It's a heck of a lot easier when you have a horizontal approach to social media than a vertical one. I always joke that in a perfect world I would never ever have a single direct report because all the digital and social talent would be spread throughout the organization. It also means that you don't ever have to do an employee review, which is really nice. But it's a lot easier to turn around a large ship when you have teams throughout the org who are supporting this idea of amazing. And I really believe that amazing ideas lead to a return that's felt. It gets you out of that 2 million likes and 16% saw it and 10% clicked. I mean, I don't want to do that. Like, I just don't. And I don't think any of you in this room really want to be reduced down to basically that element of social. I hope not. So to kind of give you a little flavor for that, how do we get to these amazing ideas? The first thing for us at Walgreens is it grounded in insights? And this is actually a very similar model I've brought to Campbell. Is it grounded in insights? I value insights over opinions. I don't care about your opinions. I do care about your insights, right? And insights are founded in data. Opinions come from thought bubble. Will it make us uncomfortable? And we knew we're always sometimes on to things that are different when you're like, oh, how can we pull that off? I don't know how I could pull it off. There's no manual for this. There's no process, protocol, procedure, set of partners. It hasn't been done before. It makes you uncomfortable. Is it horizontal? As I've talked about, you have to get other folks involved. Will our customers want to alter their behavior? This is the hardest test. If what you do is so ridiculously amazing, you will fundamentally change your behavior to participate in it, right? And that's everything from the baseball card analogy that was brought up earlier to tap and pay. I don't know if you've ever done tap and pay. God, it's so gratifying. Like, don't even take out your wallet, just tap the damn phone and move right on, right? That's awesome, right? Like, that's changing your behavior. That's completely fundamentally changing how you participate. Does it pass the eye test? You can always look at an idea, especially an idea that almost starts to get watered down, and you know that point where it's been watered down to the point it's no longer amazing, right? Legal's got in, they've redlined this, and operations told you can't do this, and marketing wants to make sure that this key reason to believe benefit copy point makes it into the copy. You're like, oh, Jesus Christ, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, it's just not a good idea anymore. And like, you have to trust the eye test on it. And the other big thing is we talk about riding the rails. So the idea of all these people are going to come to my website and then have this amazingly rich experience with me, for the most part, doesn't really happen. And frankly, it's costly, right? Spend a bunch of money. I call it the Mad Men effect. Imagine if Mad Men had been on NBC or on HBO. They wouldn't have to advertise on HBO, on NBC, on ABC to get people to go to whatever it is, Bravo or AMC, wherever the heck the show is on. It's a phenomenal show. I DVR it all the time. I couldn't tell you what show it's on. I just couldn't. But imagine like that idea, and think about your website in that same way. Depreciating asset versus appreciating asset. You're in Facebook. You don't want to leave Facebook. I'm in Instagram. I don't want to leave Instagram. It costs time, effort, and money to get me to leave the places I am. So we think about, can we ride the rails of other people's existing infrastructure to make the experience happen? Now, the cool part, marketing operations people love it because it costs you less, right? It costs you a heck of a lot less to put your video on YouTube and let Google absorb the cost of distribution than it would be to host it on your own Akamai server, right? It costs you $0 to put your site on Tumblr or WordPress or any other kind of hosted cloud solution that exists there rather than building your own infrastructure. So there's an operational reason to do this stuff. It's not just like theory. I want to give you an example of what we actually did last year that did this.
Numbers that a simple vaccine can help prevent, if you have access to it. Walgreens wanted to ensure more people did by pledging over $6 million in flu shots to those in need. And for the first time ever, we put the power to give away those millions into customers' hands. For 1 month, when a customer checked into a Walgreens store via Foursquare and Facebook, we promised to donate a flu shot to someone in need. Within hours, fighting the flu went viral. Social conversations lit up Twitter, the blogosphere, and Facebook news feeds. Nearly half of participants shared their check-ins, encouraging others to get involved. Sharing exposed the campaign to over 12 million people within users' networks alone. Once the program was in swing, Walgreens owned almost 72% of the flu conversation over competitors. And we didn't stop there. We also gave Facebook users the opportunity to tell us who would receive the most flu shots. A full spectrum of notable causes gave visitors the chance to choose what was important to them and help others with a click and a quick vote. And vote they did, over and over again. The voting page garnered nearly 200,000 visitors in 1 month's time. Page likes quadrupled. Program engagement climbed and stayed consistent from day one until the campaign's close, proving that social was the best fit for activation. And all the emphasis placed on the necessity of flu shots did exactly what Walgreens intended. Position the store as the go-to for preparing and protecting your family this season. Walgreens stayed top of mind as the flu shot headquarters and increased sales during a vital period. It goes to show, people love to give to companies that give back. Ultimately, Walgreens successfully made fighting the flu and fighting for a cause go hand in hand.
So a couple things. That's why social media at scale is ridiculously hard. These are all different types of teams that actually need to get involved to make this initiative happen. 20+ teams. Those are just the high-level ones, right? We had to have the pharmacy team actually know how to use Foursquare. What does a check-in mean? How to redeem a voucher? Customer service, what if someone calls? The e-commerce team, right? Because what if I actually wanted to pre-buy my voucher ahead of time? Do I still actually get credit for the check-in? The cause marketing team, HR, ER, this thing was massive to be able to pull off. Now here's the cool thing. When we first pitched this idea to Foursquare, Foursquare says, we've never done a program like this. I said, awesome. I said, well, we want to do a program like this. We think it's good for you. It's good for us. Foursquare team, led by Eric Friedman on the business development side, said, we love this idea. We think it's killer. So we said, okay, well, if you think it's killer and we think it's killer, here's what we want. We want an exclusive on it. We want to lock out all of our competitors from being able to do a similar type of program for 2 years. And this actually started a very long and has been a very mutually kind of fruitful relationship with us and Foursquare. Foursquare said, no problem. We'll make it happen. So I knew we were onto something when a couple things happened. The first was I got a call from a colleague of mine who works at Weber Shandwick, who works on the CVS account, who said, you've made my life a living hell today. And I said, okay, why? He says, well, as you might imagine, your Foursquare program that's just blowing up everything online got me a call from my client, who got a call from their boss, who got a call from the CMO, who asked why it was we weren't doing this. And when I called Foursquare, they said, you guys have an exclusive on it. I said, well, maybe you should put your money into amazing ideas instead of doing it into advertising. I don't know, and in all seriousness, when we did kind of competitive monitoring, we were being outspent 10-1 by CVS and Rite Aid combined, yet we were seeing growth 20 times the rate that they were. We focused on ideas that were big, we focused on ideas that were horizontal, we focused on ideas that hit multiple areas that the consumer might interact. We didn't dump it into Facebook advertising, we didn't dump it into Twitter advertising. Those were elements. I want to be very clear. It's not like you can't just do this organically. Anyone who tells you that advertising and social is a bad thing because it's all supposed to be natural and organic and rainbows and sunshine and unicorns, not true. Like, that person, don't listen to that person. Like, definitely, if you can get the money to support your social initiatives, you get the money to support your social initiatives. And then the validation really came at the end where the Shorty Awards, which is basically like the Oscars for social media, they picked up 4 awards. And not just like 4 awards that beat out MTV for their work during the MTV Music Awards. Like, mind-blowing, right? When you look at like, the panel of people who voted on it, so we knew it stuck. And we actually measured comp sales year over year, looked at kind of what adjusted in the marketing spend and what we had done. This really was the outlier, the only adjustment, and had the best performance ever in a flu season when we shouldn't have, because the weather was awesome this last fall, if you guys remember that, in a scenario where there wasn't like a flu outbreak, like West Nile or any other any other kind of things that were out there driving people in. So this clearly was an outlier. And I like to think that we made flu shots meaningful and exciting, and giving you like a little peek under the tent. Where this started was someone saying, let's do a viral video about people getting their flu shots. I was like, you want to do a viral video of people getting their flu shots? That's not viral. Plus, that's legally bad. Imagine you get sick from getting your flu shot. You have visual evidence of potentially a mishandle or something like that. So it's clearly not a good idea to do. But that's where we started. And sometimes in an organization, you have to start with one nugget of an idea, which is we want to make this thing meaningful and exciting, and we architected this program. But it took a huge amount of people to do it. But we get to something I think for us was amazing. And this is actually what it looked like. So if you look at this actually comes from Visible Technologies. I know someone asked earlier about partners. I love Visible Technologies. I think they're phenomenal from a social media monitoring and analysis standpoint. We also work with Crimson Hexagon, who I think is killer. They're out here in Cambridge. They do a phenomenal job. So if you actually look at us, we're red and CVS is blue. And remember, CVS is spending ads during this time. Okay? 9/6 is actually when the program launched, and it got covered by everyone across the entire web. It hit the stores. I mean, literally, and we didn't look back. This thing actually extended out another couple of months. You would just see, it just destroy everyone else. In a good way, for us at least, in a good way. Last year was 55-45% market share, and as you saw from the video, it ended up being about roughly 70-30. And again, the only change was this program. So shifting to something that's a little bit more fun. Do you know how big a ton of candy is? Any idea? Any idea? Okay. A ton of candy in a New York City, one sort of pseudo bedroom apartment, more like a studio that's 600 square feet, would have you being inside of it about 7 inches deep. You could lay in a full ton of candy. I mean, it's pretty big. It's kind of like that kind of big, like Scrooge McDuck style. You could do that maybe, depending on how small your place was. And in working with after kind of coming off of this program, internally, people were like, we want to do a freaking program that's cool. And so the holiday team for Halloween calls, up the social team. It's like, hey, we saw this flu thing, and a lot of people internally are sharing emails and all the press coverage about it, and we want some internal kudos too. What could we do? And then it started with, they said, well, we have this idea. We want to give away some candy. I was like, what kind of candy? They're like, I don't know, candy for a year. You know how small candy for a year is? It's 2 pieces a day for 365 days. It's 10 bags. It's really tiny. I said, well, what if we give away a ton of candy? They're like, are you sure that's a good idea? I mean, we're like a health and wellness company. I'm like, yeah, but wellness is like emotional wellness too, right? I mean, you got to be happy with it. So we called up Hershey, who was their awesome partner. And Hershey said, you want to give away a ton of candy? That's freaking awesome. And I was like, really? They're like, yeah, no one ever asked us for that. We totally want to do it. And we want to deliver the candy. I'm going to bring it to the town. And we said, okay, great. We got something going on here, right? Again, you get partners really excited. So we architected a program where you had to tell us how you would share your ton of candy. And we would actually drop off a full ton of candy right before Halloween. This is the woman who won. That's the truck in the back. That's one of the trucks in the back that actually has all the candy offloading it. How big did this get? She stumped for votes at her local Walgreens. She brought her laptop with her and actually asked people to sign in on Facebook and vote for her. The town's local mayor, who is, he's in here someplace. There he is right there, the guy with the red tie. That's the local mayor of the town. He got involved. They had Girl Scouts, they had Boy Scouts, they had the firemen, they had police officers, and they got an entire community into one cul-de-sac. She actually took on the ownership of talking to her alderman and getting the approval to have this truck show up. It was awesome. It was a huge freaking party. And in the category for us, when we looked at kind of adjusted sales year over year, we knew we'd hit the right mark on this, that the program was big enough to change perception, cement Walgreens as a destination, make all the kind of right metrics we had up front. You have to know your metrics up front. We just totally exceeded. And then the last thing I'll tell you about, again, we really, merchandise this partnership with Foursquare. So he said, well, what if we did something really simple? We want to get you to make an extra trip to a Walgreens. Remember I said, if you change your consumer behavior, you're really onto something? So let's say the average person visits a Walgreens 3 times a week, right? You come in, maybe get your morning coffee, maybe you might pick up a bottle of water, maybe you have to pick up your prescription, photos, you name it. So we called up our folks at Redbox, and Redbox said, we'd love to do something together. We have Redboxes on half of Walgreens locations throughout the country. Redbox said, we have one problem though, we hope you could help us. You guys seem really tight with Foursquare. Foursquare won't let us claim our locations because it opens up this whole door of will this Chase get to claim an ATM? Is an ATM someplace you can check into? And we said, okay, that's interesting. So we actually called up our team at Foursquare and said, look, we've got this really big idea we want to do with Redbox. They'd love it if you guys could actually accept them as a merchant so they can manage their locations. In exchange for making that happen, Redbox gave us $1 million worth of free movies to give away, completely give away. We said, you come to a Walgreens, you get a free movie. That simple. We didn't push, get your prescription. We said, come to Walgreens, get your movie, have an awesome night with your family. And we measured the program year over year, same store sales, you nailed it. I can tell you that the return on this program alone was in the 7 figures and in between 7 and 8 figures in terms of year over year, same store sales, the ones that had red boxes, all because people said, this is awesome. And again, when you get an extra shopping trip coming in, you can quantify what the value of a basket is, you know what the volume was going to be, you could predict it. Our store people love this, as you might imagine, right? Because they're totally blowing away their weekly numbers, with one program like this. The problem, of course, becomes then everyone wants to do the same program again and again and again and again. You have to keep coming up with more amazing ideas. That's the danger. I fundamentally believe this. I think if you focus on ROA, you eventually get to ROI. If you focus just on the ROI, it is like looking just at the tree without seeing the forest. I think it works. I've seen it work. I really believe that the return from social comes from focusing on the amazing. And right now, that's exactly what I'm working on at Campbell's Soup. And hopefully, in a future summit, I'll be able to kind of share some of those things. Thank you.
Questions